while telling you about the Indian classical music, I was discussing about a rag, and as I told you, rag is a musical pattern which is formed and which through which it pleases our heart. You can say that these patterns have their own identity, and as I was telling you, what are the important discipline rules which has to be followed throughout the rag. As I told you, rag should be from some family known as thaat. A rag has to have some category, jati, which can be known with the numbers of the number of the notes which has to be followed during the aro and avro. Another thing I told you about the aro and avro, that means the ascending and descending order. The notes which are used in any particular rag, the pattern it is used during the ascending form and during the descending form. What pattern is used, which notes are being used. These patterns are known as aro and avro. Now, another thing I discuss about the pakad, that means the main feature or the main phrase of different notes through which we can immediately identify the rag. That is known as pakad. Now, another comes the vadi and samvadi of any rag. What is vadi? Vadi means that main note which is like a king, that main note through which you immediately recognize the rag, the main note which is used more and more while performing the rag, that note which is very important, which the rag cannot have its own identity without that note. The nyas has to be there, the emphasis has to be there, the pause has to be there. So it is used, we can in a simple form we can say that vadi note is just like a king, which is very important, used again and again. It shines like a star, it has its own individual identity, and throughout the rag it is used more and more, and that is important in the maximum phrases of that particular rag. As I said that the vadi note is given can be compared with the king. So samvadi means a minister. It has to have the balance while performing any rag. Sharj, if sharj is vadi, then the fourth or the fifth note from sharj will be the samvadi. That means if sa is vadi, samvadi has to be madhyam or pancham to make a balance. Vadi is known as keynote, samvadi is known as consonant. So it has to be balanced. Like if I am asking any question, from other end the answer has to be there. If I am saying something, the response has to be there from the other side. So it makes a balance. Like if any building is made, for that at least the pillars, two main pillars has to have the balance, because the whole building will be formed according to that. If the base is not strong, if the pillars don't have the proper balance, then nothing can be created. The same thing in rag, the way vadi is used more and more, after that less than vadi but very important note is which is used again and again, the same features which vadi have but lesser than vadi, is known as samvadi. Now these two notes are very important. In rag Kedar, as I was giving you the example, madhyam is known as vadi note, that means the main swar, and sharj is known as samvadi. So while singing or doing the alapchari of the rag, we can easily make out that yes, these notes are very important, used again and again. Like for example, sa re sa sa ma ma pa ma pa da pa ma sa re sa. See how madhyam is coming again and again. Ma pa da pa ma sa ma ma pa da pa ma sa da pa ma, ma pa sa re sa da pa ma. Everything is coming and taking rest at madhyam. Ma pa da pa ma. Another important thing that both the types of madhyam is being used. That means Shuddha also and Tivra also. But Tivra madhyam will be used only in this special phrase. Ma pa da pa ma. For this one only the madhyam will be used, Tivra madhyam. And rest of the places the Shuddha madhyam will be used. Sa ma ma pa da pa sa da pa ma, ma sa re sa da pa, ma pa sa re sa, ma pa da pa ma pa da ni sa da pa ma pa da pa ma sa re sa. See, music is an art where any art, but I am especially talking about music, because here practically we have to tell you, practically if it is given from one side and from another side the same thing is expected to come. For that continuously practice has to be done. So the thing is that which is performed, which has whatever has been performed has to come from another side also. So this is it. You can say that it's an oral tradition. Yes, it's an oral tradition. I have whatever I am telling you theoretically, I have to tell you practical also, because without that it is not possible to understand it, it is not possible to perform it. So practical aspect is very important. So जैसे राग केदार की हमने बात की, अभी आपको हमने बताया कि वादी और संवादी जो है वो मध्यम और षड्ज है। बार बार वादी स्वर का प्रयोग होता है। वादी स्वर यानी ऐसा स्वर जो बार बार जिसका प्रयोग हो रहा है, जो जिस पर न्यास बहुत होता है, न्यास यानी ठहराव, और जो बिल्कुल अलग चमकता है, इसीलिए उसको राजा की तुलना दी गई है। और वैसे ही संवादी स्वर जो है उसके संवाद में होता है, यानी कुछ प्रश्न किया तो आंसर मिला, तो क्वेश्चन एंड आंसर में भी वादी और संवादी बहुत ही प्रमुख होते हैं। तो एक संवाद, एक डायलॉग जो है वो स्थापित होता है। हम यदि किसी से इफ यू आस्क एनी क्वेश्चन, हाउ आर यू, द आंसर हैज टू, इट इज एक्सपेक्टेड दैट द आंसर हैज टू कम फ्रॉम अनदर साइड, which is the same balance, the same response, the same balance from both the sides, the Vadi and Samvadi. तो ये बहुत ही important है राग में, वादी और संवादी। वादी और संवादी के बाद अनुवादी और विवादी भी आता है। अनुवादी यानी बाकी जो स्वर, जैसे माँ और सा तो वादी हो गए, उसके अलावा भी तो नोट्स हैं जिससे कि राग बनता है, तो उसको हम अनुवादी कहते हैं। और विवादी ऐसा स्वर जो जिसका प्रयोग राग में नहीं होना चाहिए, जो राग को बिगाड़ देता है, तो इसीलिए उसको विवादी कहा जाता है। तो मेन तौर पे हम कहें वादी और संवादी का जानना बहुत ज़रूरी है। In any rag, if Vadi and Samvadi are there, besides Vadi and Samvadi, Anuvadi and Vivadi notes are also there. Anuvadi notes means all those swaras, all those notes which are used in rag except Vadi and Samvadi. I mean, Vadi and Samvadi are taken aside, and you can't say that rag can be formed only with Vadi and Samvadi. There has to be another notes also to give it a picture, to give it a shape. So what are those notes? Suppose if I say that Rag Kedar is having Ma Vadi and Sa Samvadi. So Sa Ma, Ma Sa Ma. How many times are you going to sing? We have to have other notes also. Then only we'll come to know about the Rag Kedar, the detail of the Rag Kedar, the practical aspect of Rag Kedar. So here Sa Ma Ma Pa Pancham, Dha Pa Dhaivat, Ni Da Sa Nishad. So these three notes are Anuvadi notes. Sa Da Pa Ma Sa Re Sa. During Avroh, Rishabh is also used. So to form this rag, to give a shape to this rag, to give a picture to this rag, besides Madhyam and Sharaj being Vadi and Samvadi, Rishabh, Pancham, Dhaivat and Nishad are also important, and so they are known as Anuvadi Swar, Anuvadi notes. Now there is one more swar known as Vivadi. Vivadi means something controversial. If we use certain note which should not be used in that particular rag, it spoils the shape of the rag, it spoils the picture of the rag, or it should not be used. If it is used, then the rag changes its shape. You can't say that this rag, suppose if in rag Kedar, if I start using Rishabh, Shuddha Rishabh or Komal Rishabh, or I use Komal Dhaivat, which should not be used. So the rag spoils. The shape of the rag differs than what it should be. Here we should know which note has to be used. So any note which should not be used in a rag, or which changes the face of the rag, changes the shape of the rag, takes rag somewhere else, that note is known as Vivadi Swar. Now the question arises, why the Vivadi Swar should be described then? Why the Vivadi Swar should be used then? It has no importance. Yes, you are right, but sometimes some of the musicians while performing use some of the notes for a very short time just to beautify it. It is like a beauty spot. Like for example, Pandit Bhatkhande has in bandishes which he has given in Kramik Pustak Malika Part 2, there in Rag Bhairav, at some of the places you can find Komal Nishad. Now Komal Nishad is used in Rag Ramkali. But the question arises, why has Komal Nishad been used by in certain bandishes? Just to maybe the artist who had composed that bandish, who had created that bandish, or who has given the Swaralipi of that bandish, maybe he or she used it to just beautify it with a small tinge of it, just like a beauty spot. So it is the same thing. राग को एक अलग छोटा सा उसको बस छू कर आना, या बहुत कम समय के लिए ऐसे स्वर पर का प्रयोग करना जो कि विवादी स्वर है, मात्र कुछ कलाकार कभी कभी अपने कार्यक्रमों में, अपने गायन में या अपने वादन में उसको इस्तेमाल करते, जो कभी कभी अच्छा लगता है। लेकिन विद्यार्थी के तौर पे हमें उसको जानना ज़रूरी है, पर उसका इस्तेमाल हमें नहीं करना चाहिए। जितना हो सके हमें उसको अवॉइड करना चाहिए, क्योंकि हम जब एक विद्यार्थी के रूप में सीख रहे होते हैं तो हमें राग की प्योर फॉर्म को ही जानना जो है वो ज़्यादा बेहतर है। तो वादी, संवादी और अनुवादी विवादी स्वर तो हो गए। अब होता है राग का समय, टाइम थ्योरी ऑफ राग। Now time theory is a very important part, very important aspect of Indian classical music. Every rag has its time to perform, and during that time when the rag is performed, then it gives a different feeling. It gives the exact bhav, exact emotion of that rag which comes out during that period only. And the time theory has been, the person who must have created this time theory gave it a very logical description about it, which will be, I'll be taking this topic in some other episode. So it is very important that every rag has got its fixed time to perform. Nowadays some rules are also changing, but still maximum we try to perform, or during the performance I am saying, not during the learning. The rag should be performed during the given time, prescribed time for that particular rag. Like Bhairav should be sung during the morning hours, Kedar has to be sung during the late evening time. The same way Vrindavani Sarang should be sung during the mid-noon. The time has been fixed, the certain rules are there for the time theory, which also is an important feature for Indian classical music. Now, besides the time which is fixed, which has been decided for different ragas, the nature also plays its own important part. Now, nature means the rag has got its own nature. Like I was singing Kedar. Sama ma pa da pa sa da pa ma pa da pa ma. Sama sa re sa da pa sa re sa Now here you don't find that the rag is very fast. You can say the rag is very melodious, the rag is very soothing, the rag is slightly serious also. The rag is, it doesn't gives the feel of something very fast, very catchy. The rag has its own nature, as we people have our different natures. The same way different rag have different natures, and this nature can be felt, can be feel while singing or performing the rag, while listening to that particular rag. So every rag has its own nature, which can be known through the use of different notes of that particular rag. So this is also very important aspect. हर राग का अपना एक स्वभाव होता है. जैसे हम मनुष्य हैं, हम 10 लोग भी एक साथ हैं, हम हर व्यक्ति का अपना अलग अलग स्वभाव होता है, अलग अलग नेचर होता है, अलग अलग पसंद होती है. एक का दूसरे से मेल नहीं खाता. लेकिन कभी कभी हम कहते हैं कि हम लोग एक ही नेचर के हैं, यानी हम लोग की रुचियां, हम लोग की कुछ आदतें, हम लोग की बहुत चीज़ें जो हैं वो मिलती हैं, लेकिन फिर भी अपना एक विशिष्ट स्वभाव होता है हर व्यक्ति का. ऐसे ही राग का भी अपना एक विशिष्ट स्वभाव होता है. जैसे राग केदार को गाते माधुर्य है, कहीं पर शांत है, कहीं पर करुणा, कहीं पर श्रृंगार भी है. तो ये एक बहुत ज़्यादा शोक का सा नहीं है, बहुत ज़्यादा चंचल नहीं नज़र आ रहा है. तो इन्हें हर राग की अपनी माधुर्य है और श्रृंगार भी है, लेकिन बहुत अधिक चंचलता इसमें नज़र नहीं आ रही है. तो इसका मतलब ये राग का स्वभाव इस प्रकार से है. तो राग को जानने के लिए राग का नेचर भी जानना बहुत ज़रूरी है. Now next important feature is that any rag has, as I told you, that every rag has its own way of singing, which can be done with the help of the notes which should be used in that particular rag. But one more thing, that sometimes we find some 1 or 2 or 3 ragas which also are very close, or can be felt that yes, sometimes you get confused whether it is Kedar or not. It sounds slightly like Kedar, but somewhere else it is showing some other thing also. Now what is the another thing you should know? That means the same type of notes are also being used in any other rag also, which makes the similar nature, the similar pattern. और in Hindi we say सम प्राकृतिक राग, एक जैसी प्रकृति है, एक ही जैसे लग रहे हैं. They sound the same while singing the aro and avro. See, it is very important. While singing the aro avro, they sound the same, or maybe slightly some feature or some notes are used which makes a difference. But using certain while doing the arohan or during the purvang or uttrang, maybe sometime we get confused that if it is rag Kedar or some other rag. So this is also a very important feature, that we should know that what are the ragas we are very nearer to the to rag Kedar, and we should know what makes it nearer. I mean, that means what are the similarities and what are the differences. what makes it different. We should know about it. It is a very important thing, because normally while learning the rag, we only take care of the rag, the main face of the rag, aro, avro, alap. We keep on doing practice without knowing or without thinking that maybe the same thing, the same frame is also used in any other rag. Or sometime while doing practice, suddenly we feel that yes, the combination of these 2-3 notes can also be used here. It sounds good, though it is sounding good, but it should not be used in rag Kedar. So we should know about the similar ragas also of any particular rag when we are learning it. संप्रकृतिक राग यानी सेम प्रकृति के राग, बिल्कुल वैसी ही प्रकृति के रागों को जानना बहुत ज़रूरी है. ये भी एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बात आती है जब हम किसी भी राग को जानने की कोशिश करते हैं कि उसकी संप्रकृतिक राग कौन से. जैसे हम केदार की बात करते हैं तो सा रे सा मा मा पा मा प द प मा सा द प मा प द प मा. कभी कभी कुछ लोग ऐसे भी गाते हैं मा प द नि द प मा प द प मा. So like this, sometimes Komal Nishad is also used, but only during this phrase. Ma pa तीव्र मध्यम, ma pa da ni कोमल निषाद, da ni da pa, ma pa da ni da pa, ma pa da pa ma, sa re sa. So this gives a picture of rag Kedar. You can find some of these same notes in any other rag also. Like in this rag, sa re sa ga ma da da ni da sa ni da pa ma pa da pa ga ma re sa ga ma da. So here sometimes you get confused that sa re sa. Okay, ga ma da, this is not used in Kedar, we have not heard about it. Ni da sa, yes, this phrase is used in Kedar also. Sa ni da pa, of course in Kedar also you find it. Ma pa da pa, no, this is also used, but slightly difference is there. What is difference? Ma pa da pa ma makes it rag Kedar. Ma pa da pa sounds is little bit different. Ma pa da pa ga ma re sa. Now in Kedar this phrase is not used. So this type of combination, this type of pattern, if it is sung, is known as rag Hamir, which is very nearer to rag Kedar. So we can say that the rag Hamir is Samprakartik rag of rag Kedar. Now, Kamod is also one of the rag. Sa re pa da pa ni da sa ni da pa ga ma re sa. Here also you are finding some of the phrases which are, yes, of course, used in Kedar, and same thing is being used in Kamod. But there are certain other phrases which makes it different. Why I am telling you? Because while knowing about the rag, while practicing the rag, some Prakartik rags should also be, we should also know about some Prakartik rag and the pattern which makes it that particular rag, so that we can easily differentiate, so that while performing we should not mingle up the ragas, we should not get confused. So in the beginning also, in the very beginning, while learning the rag, we should know about all these features. Now, as I told you that these are the different features, these different features only makes the Indian classical music. It makes it classic. That means this makes the discipline of Indian classical music. And this discipline has to be followed throughout the performance, throughout the presentation, I should say. जब भी किसी राग को हम जानने का प्रयास करते हैं तो उस राग को, ये तो बात स्पष्ट है कि भाई स्वरों और स्वरों के जो एक पैटर्न है, जो वर्ण है, उसके ही कॉम्बिनेशन से जो है वो राग बनता है। लेकिन राग को बनाने के लिए राग की और भी चीज़ें जानना बहुत ज़रूरी है, जो मैंने आपसे बताया, जैसे थाट है, जाति है, समय है, उसकी प्रकृति है, उसके वादी संवादी है, उसके संप्रकृतिक राग हैं, और उसमें न्यास के स्वर यानी किन स्वरों पर ठहराव किया जाता है जब हम आलापचारी करते हैं, और कैसे उसको जो न्यास के स्वर भी राग को कुछ अलग करते हैं, और उसके विशिष्ट स्वर समुदाय, दैट मीन्स इम्पॉर्टेंट फ्रेजेज विच शुड बी यूज्ड व्हाइल परफॉर्मिंग दैट राग. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, राग केदार सा रे सा इम्पॉर्टेंट, सा मा पा सेकेंड इम्पॉर्टेंट, मा प द प मा थर्ड इम्पॉर्टेंट, सा नि द प ma pa da pa ma. This beautiful phrase, when we do the nyas on madhyam, ma pa da pa ma shuddha madhyam. So this is the way how both the madhyams are used. When while singing this particular phrase, it immediately gives the clear picture of Rag Kedar, and yes, very important feature for Rag Kedar. So this has to be it has to be known before we start the riyaz of the rag. Now classical music goes through all these disciplines. That is why it is classical. When we read the theoretical aspect of classical music, it also gives the same description. राग ये है, राग का थाट ये है, जाति ये सारे डिस्क्रिप्शन सेम हैं, पर उसको प्रैक्टिकली कैसे उसको गाया बजाया जाता है अपने वाद्य के अंतर्गत, वो जानना बेहद ज़रूरी है। इस श्रृंखला के अंतर्गत हम आपको जो सिद्धांत बता रहे हैं भारतीय शास्त्रीय संगीत के, उन सिद्धांतों के अंतर्गत आज हमने आपको भारतीय शास्त्रीय संगीत, जो कि रागदारी संगीत कहा जाता है, उसके विषय में आपको विस्तार से बताया, और धीरे धीरे हम भारतीय शास्त्रीय संगीत के अन्य सिद्धांतों को लेकर भी आएंगे। वो आपके दोनों भाषाओं में होंगे, हिंदी और अंग्रेजी दोनों में है, और साथ ही साथ उसमें हम रागों के बारे में भी विस्तार से आपको बताएंगे, और कुछ हम इसके जो शास्त्र पक्ष है उसके बारे में भी बताएंगे, क्योंकि विद्यार्थी चाहे वो किसी भी विश्वविद्यालय का हो या कोई भी संगीत प्रेमी जो इन लेसन्स को देखता हो, इन वीडियोस को देखता हो CEC के, उसको शास्त्र पक्ष भी जानना ज़रूरी है और क्रियात्मक पक्ष भी। तो दोनों की जानकारी उसको इस श्रृंखला के अंतर्गत देने का प्रयास किया जाएगा। इसी के साथ आज का ये एपिसोड हम यहीं पर संपन्न करते हैं। नमस्कार।